meeting at a restaurant called Lake Meadows Restaurant, about 34th now King Drive. And he was in there. In 67, 67, we were having a meeting at a restaurant called Lake Meadows Restaurant, about 34th now King Drive. And he was in there, and early in the morning, 7:30, with some ministers, and the word got out around the projects. And the word got out, Martin is in town. And within an hour and a half after he come out of the restaurant to come out to the street, people all over. Martin, Martin, Martin. And he just walked, embracing. I mean, you just see those changes of joy and happiness, I mean. So everybody's hopes was with him and what he was about. The thing we need to remember is that the movement was in 55 and he died in 68, just 13 years. And he changed everything. I mean, Martin Luther King changed from back of the bus where you couldn't get a seat, where you couldn't do this, couldn't do that, and you could vote in 13 years. And he did it even after he went and visited with President Johnson. President Johnson told him, no, take it easy. And he was through. He had a Nobel Peace Prize. He had offered to sell books, to give speeches, and get wealthy. And he gave that all up. I mean, he didn't get into that.
The exhibition, McSween Meets King, a civil rights story, helps to bring history to life through Cirilo McSween, a man who shares the impact of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on his life and the world. Through his vivid memory and personal collection, McSween chronicles segments of the civil rights movement from a frontline point of view.
Well, he was a little shorter than I am, my build, so to speak. As you can see in the picture, as we're here looking at him, sitting, standing. Picture behind me was the last picture that he took the night before he was murdered. That picture was the first picture he took in a bus once it was integrated after the Montgomery bus boycott. He would stay in a room for hours and listen to debates and never say anything until it's time to speak. He would just captivate people all around him, particularly those that we consider to be underprivileged and those that couldn't impress and fight for themselves. He just had a yearning, just a love, and talked about us being better and finer human beings. Well, I was born in a place called Marañón, and it is one of the most devastated poverty areas in Panama. I mean, and that's where I was born. I was born with a brother and sister. I'm the second of 3 children, and my mother was from Panama, and my father was from Grenada, Central American island, British-owned island, and that's where I was born. And I was born under, all 5 of us lived in one room. It's not a large room, and we cooked outside the room. And all of us had to kind of walk down to go to the bathroom. So it was real poverty kind of experience. My father was from Grenada. It's an English-speaking island. It's in South America, and my mother is a native Panamanian. Was born. Her mother was her grandmother. She's just native Panamanian, and they met in Panama City, where my father migrated, to work and to live, really. Supportive, wanted to make something of their children, and worked on it. I mean, worked with it. I mean, and wanted to make sure that everything was available for you to grow. And I mean, I never worked in Panama. I didn't think about it because that's not where they were. They were to work whatever time and hours it took so that we could learn and speak in a fashion that was representative of the family. It was a real, McSween needs to be known and be respected. Well, he was a real nonsense kind of person. And he was concerned at one time that that perhaps I was not running fast enough because this other fellow who was not a student, who was a mature man actually, who was tall and big and felt perhaps that I was talking about him too much, like scared of him. And he told me one Saturday afternoon, I want for us to go to walk, and we walked. We walked it was about 5 blocks, and when you get there, it's by the Pacific Ocean. And I never forget this. He said, look as far as you can look and tell me what you see. I look as far as I could look, and I see the ocean, you know what I mean? He said, look further, what do you see? And I said, well, I see the skies. He said, look even further. I said, well, that's all I see. He said, yes, but if you really look further than that, you'll see that the ocean and the skies come together as one. He said, if you ever get your mind together, you'll beat him because you'll be one. And you'll have confidence as the ocean and the skies meet. So would you. And you know that? I beat that guy. Well, I came to America by the invitation of Herb McKinley, who was a great runner that went to the University of Illinois, and who was the best runner in the world, broke records every time he ran for Jamaica. He's a Jamaican. And he suggested that when I concluded high school that I ought to go to the University of Illinois, and he could arrange a scholarship for me. And he did do that, and I did, in fact, went to the University of Illinois on an athletic scholarship. When the day before I left, the day of my trip to leave, we had, at the airport, imagine, I had the high school band out, everybody out wishing me luck and this and that. It was really very special. And my mom was there, my dad here, and this and that. And then I looked, and I'm ready to leave, and he says, wait, I want to talk to you for a second. And he said, yes. And he says, when you go to America, let America know what a Panamanian is. He said, when you go to America, you're going to be special, but you must study and act right. You must represent us. You just must represent us. He said, I'm going to miss you, but you must represent us. That's right. And it was a lot of people, a lot of stuff. And I didn't even remember that until years later. I remember what he said. And it was meaningful to me. It wasn't easy. The weather was absolutely difficult for me. I came in the wintertime. And it snowed. great difficulty in adoption. In addition to that, the racial prejudices were really difficult. In Champaign, we were not allowed to live where we wanted to. We were not allowed to get any jobs as we could like other students. It was a real adjustment for me, and one that was very degrading and disrespectful. I came to the University of Illinois, and I guess for the first time, we were living in a place called Parade Ground Units, which was the first time that the University of Illinois had integrated some of its units, but that was the only place that was integrated, because prior to that, blacks just couldn't live on campus, just couldn't live on the facilities of the university. We could not eat on campus. We could not eat on campus. The only place we could eat was the cafeteria at the university, and there was a place called Katsina's that we could eat at. On campus or off campus downtown, we could not eat it downtown. And we had some difficulties. I remember though, one time another athlete and myself named Dick Goins and we went in. And he told me, I don't know why you're coming in here, because we can't eat here. We can't get nothing here. And I said, come on with me. And then he come and he said, well, we don't serve niggas here, really. And then I says, well, is this for sale? And he said, yeah, it's for sale. I said, that's what we want. What for sale? Because we can pay for it. And we got it. But I was always, challenging. We would go and to run. And many of the my fellow athletes, would not go in to register at the hotel until I came, because we would just be abused. And I would always be talking back and talking about it, because we couldn't just allow that kind of stuff. I didn't always have a lot of jobs on campus. What happened was that my father died. And I was in Chicago when he died with a friend called Henry Cryer at his house, a track companion. And when I got the call that my father passed. So I came to the 63rd Street train station, caught the train to go back to Champaign. It was raining. And these parade ground units, I ran in to pack my clothes to catch a train. And then I got my passport, and then I looked around for my ticket, and then I realized I didn't have a ticket. So I said, well, I touched, looked. I also realized I didn't have enough money to pay a cab to go back to the train station to either go to Louisiana and to catch a plane back home. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. And I left and just left everything as is. And I walked in the rain all the next morning. And I came back draining, wet all over, because I really loved my father. And during this period, we had just went to California, and I had broken all kind of different records. So the next morning, my picture was in the newspaper. And yet I couldn't go back to the father. And when I came back that morning, I decided that day that I'll never be broke anymore. And I've never been broke anymore. Well, the day I graduated, I didn't attend the graduation. I mean, I had to work. I worked. I was saved. Al Latham, this guy that was here, and I remember him very, very well. We worked at the hotel together. I work as a waiter. But before I got there, I have another job and this and that, you know what I mean? But I worked there that day for graduation because it's a good day to work. So I didn't attend the graduation per se, although I graduated that day. I was interested in the insurance business. Athletes at the University of Illinois during that time, I guess prominent athletes, would sell life insurance, you know, and I was in need of those kind of funds, and I thought that I could sell life insurance. So I approached this one guy at the University of Illinois campus who was very popular, who was an athlete himself, and approached him about selling life insurance for him. And he took forever to get back to me. And then I told him, I mean, you know, what's going on here? So, and he told me, well, you know, you're a foreign student, and our company just couldn't hire you to sell for us. But it was reasonable to me because as a student, you're not supposed to do certain jobs unless you get permission from the immigration. And I thought that was acceptable to me. Well, I had, in all of my courses, I was also taking a law course. And I kind of mentioned it one day, just in passing, mentioned that I couldn't, the obstacle I had in pursuing selling insurance for this guy. So at that time now, there were, you know, there weren't any blacks in law school per se. You know, Jim Montgomery was about the only one. And then he came to me, one of the students came to me, he said, Cirilo, I don't know if that's true, you know what I mean? What happened is that major life insurance company, they don't hire black people. I mean, they don't have black agents at all, so that may or may not be true. Well, what I did, I thought this was certainly worthwhile investigating. So I went to this same professor, and I asked him about it. You know, I introduced myself, so on and so forth. This is who I am, that kind of thing. Well, he was at the school, so he knew of me, you know, running track. And he told me, yes, that's true. You know, that does happen. And he said, especially in New York lab, I don't believe they would even talk to you. You know what I mean? So what I did do after that, I wrote to the major insurance companies, including New York lab, and submitted my biography. And everybody was interested in it. You know, athlete, went to the Olympics, good student, this, that, whatever, the old thing. And until the interview. The interview, nobody. I couldn't pass with nobody. I mean, New York Life told me, after they wrote me back telling me that I was more conditioned to be a automobile machine repairman or whatever they say. I mean, and if there's anybody that knows nothing about this kind of stuff, it's me. I mean, I don't have no acumen to fix no cars and under no motor, nothing like that. I just don't. I mean, you know what I mean? Well, I knew that was me. So something was right. They were right, wrong. You know what I mean? So I've decided, frankly and honestly, that when Christmas comes during the vacation period, that I'll go to New York. And I hitchhiked and went to New York. I went to New York Live and waited for a guy named Stiglitz, Robert Stiglitz. I remember him. And I asked for him, and he was unavailable, and I waited for several hours, and somebody came out, spoke to the secretary, and the secretary says, no, Mr. Stieglitz is not quite ready. And I says, Mr. Stieglitz? He looked, he said, yes. He said, I'm Cirilo McSween, and I left the University of Illinois over 800 miles to see you. And I'm waiting to see you, and I'd like to see you. And he says, you did what? And I repeated it. He told me, wait. He came out, he brought me in my office, in his office, looked at me, he says, how long did I say? I've been up all night, you know what I mean? But I'm here, and I'm here because I wrote you this letter, you sent me this letter, and I'm told this. And I'm told that's not true. And I'm here to find out why you wouldn't have me as a representative. Well, he listened, and we went back and forth. And he says, we have talked about it, having black to represent us, but we're not ready yet. But he says, the person who would hire you has to be another regional vice president. And it can be either in Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles. It has to be a big city. I said, well, I'll select everything. I was deciding then and there, not no come back to you or nothing. I said, no, I think I'll select Chicago. And he says, okay, I will have to work it out for you, and you'll have an interview with him, but you're going to be on your own. But let me tell you something about him. And he told me his personality and all that. And I met him and introduced myself. And he told me what I had to do. I'll have to move to Chicago and this and that. So, well, let me finish up my school in June. And I had to go back to Panama, which I did, of course. And then for the winter time, I moved to Chicago with changing my visa, which we call visa and immigration status. So I started representing them, not directly, but indirectly. They didn't want to start off with me as a direct representative, that I had to be a broker and this and that and the other. And I did. I mean, I did it. No compensation. They usually have compensation that they start off paying, and I was never fortunate to do all that. I mean, I started off, as I started off my life, from scratch, and that's what I did. And my first year, I sold over $1 million of insurance. Blacks were busy purchasing what we call industrial insurance, where you buy insurance and pay weekly or monthly, or whatever the deal is. I think on the more professional basis of establishing insurance as a plan for creating wealth, which is the old thing I learned, and establishing to protect, if you're in that kind of income bracket, and establish yourself with wealth, how to protect it in the event of your death and your family, to have a continuation of that asset. Yes, that we did, because I learned it, and I made sure that I practiced it. And so it was a kind of different twist in professionalism. And people trusted me, and I never had no problem. Nobody ever wondered I sold them the wrong thing and that sort of thing, because it was really a good kind of investment. I started off in '57, so it was black professionals, but not entirely. You know, there were police officers. I started off selling what I introduced as risk, and you needed to protect your family for risk kind of thing. And then with physician, now you can continue in terms of establishing an estate or maintaining an estate for your family, yeah. It was unbelievable. I mean, this same guy, this Vice President Monsell in Chicago, it was about September when we had a conference. I asked to see him, and he asked me how I'm doing, and I showed him, and I told him, you know, we can do this by the end of the year. I can do over $1 million. But he says, you're kidding. You mean you're going to do something, and then next year you're going to, no. We're going to do it all this year. And this is my projection. So what kind of projection do you have? I said, this is what I'm going to do per day, per week. This is the conclusion of the month. So by the end of the year, I should do this. Beyond that, I'm shooting for higher than that. but the least we can settle for is this. And he called the guy up on the phone. He said, "Have you talked to Cirilo? You know what I mean? He's saying this. How much does he really have?" The guy said, "Yeah, he got all this. He brings in every day." He said, "Wait a minute. Don't go anywhere. We need to go to lunch and stuff." You know what I mean? But it was that kind of working habit. And I worked every day, morning, afternoon, evening, because I had a goal. The commission basis that I earned was equivalent of anybody working whatever they did, and I never did feel that my prospects, who would really became my client later on, were not fairly evaluated to give them the appropriate insurance policy that they requested. I mean, I thought that old episode was fair. Well, I became involved because I thought it was my duty, really, seeing all the disturbances that were going on. And it was for our rights. I mean, we were denied any equal rights or respect, because we were black, and at that time we were called colored, but whatever. Sitting in the back of the bus, I couldn't drink the same water, couldn't go to the same restaurant, couldn't have any equal facilities at all, and to stand up for what was wrong and make sure that it was right, we were brutalized. I tried to find out the situation of the organization. My thing was always the organization. And find a way that we could preserve getting some kind of credit, because we didn't have much money at all, and business people wanted cash from us and wouldn't give us a bus, for example, when we needed it. And that was a lot of my activities, plus making sure that bond money was available, since many of the people in jail sometimes we want to get out of jail. So it was not a treasurer role as such, that you count money and you look at balance sheet and you look at credit and debit and this and that. It was where we had to make sure that our people could stay in hotel if need be, and certain things happen, and certain things moving right along, all along. So a treasurer had to be in the field. He had to know what was going on, and he had to make sure that there were funds to get it. So when there was no fund, I go and look for funds to get things that he wants, so he wouldn't tie him up, I mean. So that's my importance in terms of what we're all about. I was able to bring a new kind of situation to kind of alleviate some pressures. Let's talk about the march in which we talking about making in Chicago, and talking about the some of the chain grocery stores, for us to have the right to have our products on the shelf, for example, and for those stores that were in the community to hire our people, whether they be drivers or not. I remember when one Friday Martin Luther King told some of the people that own these stores in our community that, you know, either we start hiring black drivers in the community or we would not support it. And that was a thrust. And it was an ultimatum. And those that found that black could never drive trucks, and within a week found that we could drive trucks. You know what I mean? It was that kind of and it was, if we had to march, it was intense. You know, it was right, voting for the right thing. We had situations where we had to march, where we have black side, for example, you know, stand up, or I am a man. And the reason why you'll have I am a man, simply because during those days in the South, black people would always say yes to white people. And yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, never no, I mean. So if you're a man, then you can say yes or no if you don't agree or agree. So that was one of the old psychological thrusts to make us free. When I first met Martin Luther King, I was in the South, and I became involved in his movement and as a volunteer. I always was a volunteer, never officially done anything else. But I was doing things that others would do when they volunteer, but I was more geared to bonding, getting people out of jail who needed to be in jail. We had a situation where sometimes we had some of the followers would be arrested, and they were better organizing the jail because we had so many students in jail than they would be out of jail. So sometimes we had to get those that were best able while in jail to organize the jail back in jail, and those who were able to organize the town out of jail so they could organize the town. We got to organize the town for the town to get aware that what is going on and how best to behave during the nonviolent movement. Martin was seen as a savior. I had talked to him that Tuesday, which was April 2nd. He called my office to talk to me and for me to settle some matters, to make sure that the band leaving Chicago, the breadbasket of Operation Breadbasket Band of the SCLC, Ben Branch and the others would come to Memphis. And I assured them that those arrangements would have been made. And he asked me if I were coming, and I reminded him that I was going to Detroit to have a speech I needed to give in Detroit for the Detroit Life Insurance Underwriters Association. I was in the insurance business then. But I also was going to meet with Reverend Franklin, who was the father of Aretha Franklin, in which we were going to have a fundraiser in that evening. And that Thursday that I would come on down, meaning come on down to Memphis. We had an emergency in Chicago, and I came to Chicago and I met with Reverend Clay Evans and Reverend Barrow and another person by Reverend Al Pitcher. The movement was very intense then, a lot of activities. Reverend Evans had just left us to go around 48th and Wabash at a police station to get some of our people out who were busy trying to get some folks some working positions. And then we got a call from our office. We had an office at 47th and then it was South Park, that is King Drive now, that he was shot. And the Reverend Barrow left with me, and we went down to the office to see what was going down to calm, because everybody was calling us. And I was at the treasurer at that time, so it became a real intense kind of thing to make moves all the way and to preserve our organization's integrity and making sure everything was all right, back and forth and around, and get to Atlanta as quickly as I could. That's never explainable. We were there as pallbearers, and this is a picture here that we were pallbearers, right here. Mm-hmm. This is and Al Sampson, him right here, told Jesse, let's pray and let's keep Martin dreaming. And we held hands, and you see Abernathy crying, but everybody was crying, everybody. We were just lost. I mean, it's an emptiness. That you don't want to ever have. That night we had a meeting at Reverend Jackson Church, and they have to make a distinction. This one was in Fort 50th and King Drive, and people from all over the city were coming to that. Police was all over. Portion of the city was burning and all that sort of thing. We were in contact with Reverend Jackson. We were in contact with the head of SCLC. They were all shaken. They were out of Atlanta, in touch with Coretta Scott King, his widow. And we were in touch, but not in touch on a continuous basis. During that whole process, all of us were busy. You know, nobody was sleeping. We didn't know whether it was one shot only for our leader, Martin, whether another shot was for anybody else. We thought it significant to take all the precaution necessary, and we were kind of halfway on the ground, kind of moving, and so on and so forth. It was painful. It's unforgettable. It's like you hurt all over for a long period of time without any relief. It's just a horrible kind of feeling. We had meetings the night before. A few of us would meet with the leadership of the country, whoever, just to see what was going on, to get some evaluation. We had a meeting the night before, frankly, with Harry Belafonte and Bobby Kennedy, I seem to recall, with a very few of us, because he was the kind of candidate talking to us. So that morning it was very hectic in preparation for his burial. We were at his father's church, and we left there and walked with the mules and then the coffin, and we followed it. Many of the closest followers stayed with the body throughout the march, and we got to the prayer by the school. We would go to the graveyard and so on, and we picked up the body, and you knew then, you know, it was it. I guess, and we had to push the body into an enclosed kind of cement and we had to get down to do that, you know. And after we enclosed him, which we knew then nobody could bother him, then we just held hands and prayed. And Jesse was the one led the prayer, and we were determined to always make his dream a reality. We knew that that he was constantly followed with the government. I mean, we knew this. I mean, we were told this. I mean, we were briefed on this. And after a while, you know, it could be anybody. When he was in Chicago, for example, we had some bodyguards that really took care of him. I mean, some black bodyguards particularly, who, when stones were thrown, I mean, they were like protected him all around him, I mean. And they got to know us real well. One of his bodyguards was Hillard, who was past Superintendent Hillard, for example, and who had gotten to know us real well, and would always make sure that everything is taken care of. He didn't always have bodyguard because he didn't necessarily want bodyguard, but things came up that that necessitated that. The last night that he, on his birthday, January 15th, I mean, we were outside talking. It was a warm night in Atlanta, and he and Jesse and Jim Bevel and Ralph Abernathy, Andrew Young, and we were just standing outside, just talking like a regular conversation. He didn't have any bodyguard. 2 weeks after that, he couldn't go anywhere without bodyguard. And it was the government, the FBI, in a hotel room, the FBI were protecting him, you know what I mean? And we knew that was dangerous. I mean, but we knew this, I mean, we knew this. There were threats continually. There were threats in Miami. There were threats in Washington, D.C. We had a meeting in Washington, D.C., a private meeting at a black hotel called the Pitts Hotel. And we were in there, and there was not supposed to be anybody know. And when we come out for a while, all the streets were blocked off, police everywhere, and they surrounded us and all kind of thing. You know what I mean? And they're there, I mean. So we knew, and he knew. And he knew because the rumors were around. The rumors, when he left Atlanta to come to Memphis, that plane was delayed for quite a long time because they were searching to see if there was any bomb aboard his plane. And, you know, each talked about it the night before. There were threats on his life, but there were threats. But you hear about threats even if you're going to have a meeting in one of the churches, and you know the church gonna be bombed and all. I mean, you hear this all the time, but it doesn't stop you from having the meeting. I mean, nobody with the rumors ever not have a meeting because of a threat. There were few businessmen determined that I should be a part of their group to purchase 4 McDonald franchise, which in fact I participated in. And as an investment. What happened later on was that McDonald determined that they would not have investors, that you had to be owner-operator. And one of the persons who was going to run, we needed to sell our shares to, Ed Wimp, found out there was another McDonald that would be built downtown, and they were going to be interviewing some prospective owners. And he suggested that I should be one of the persons, because he thought that perhaps it would be good for me, and perhaps McDonald would be the thing I could do. And I did that. I was in Panama when I got the call. And I came back and I was interviewed. And later on I found out then that I was the one selected, and got the management in place, and which I thought would be a good international kind of thing, and had some visions as to how it ought to look, and to have a picture with Martin Luther King and so on and so forth. So it was that kind of thing, and I did not get out of the insurance business. It was a situation where I did my second full year with McDonald Corporation. That was the first store in the country to have done $3 million. It just took a lot of time and a lot of energy for me to place it. And in the process, I thought I was not being right to give the appropriate service and sales to the insurance business. And I ultimately got out of the insurance business, and I stayed with the McDonald Corporation. In the insurance business, it's an individual effort. And in the McDonald business, it's a group effort. It's a group from management, crew, talking about many people to accomplish a goal that I think needs coordination as well as appropriate service and attention to the customers. McDonald had no black owner-operators in the country at all. It was after Martin Luther King's death that McDonald did in fact have some black franchises. When I came, it was an established practice. The thing that I was able to do with the location I had was to have established more sales. And the way I did that was to recruit. I mean, I constantly recruited, talked to different institutions that would go places and do things, and I'll convince them that they needed to come to my store and make those purchases. And we were able to do that. We were able to do that downtown with all the surrounding areas so that they will, in fact, come to visit us. The Golden Arch Award was given by absolute recognition. It's a worldwide award. It's given every 2 years internationally to the most outstanding owner-operators in the world, and who have been chosen, and I've won it. We have received the highest awards of excellence that McDonald has to offer. I mean, we have international awards. We have different regional awards. We have whatever sales award, wherever you're judged in terms of our quality and service and cleanliness, the standard that McDonald had. We have established excellence in every section of the McDonald franchise company. And we are constantly be rewarded for our involvement in the community and sales. And as a consequence, when you do this, then you're given an opportunity to expand, as we call it, and grow. And that's what we've been able to do. I see accomplishment. You know, I see from my beginning to my childhood, and then I see with natural talent, because that's the only way you can run fast and break records, but well-trained and disciplined and good coaching. You know, I have confidence in your teacher. I see that. You know, I see after that, I went to the University of Illinois and graduated, a good student under, you know, difficult circumstances. You have to work more than one job and run and still be a student. You have to have minimum hours, being a foreign student, but whatever. And then to go into the insurance business and be the first to sell $1 million, but with guts, you know what I mean? You know, whites tell you no and you won't know why no and pursue it. And feel it's your right to do what you need to do, regardless of what you're told you can and cannot do. And then to do that and to establish with a group, you know, a banking institution that became the largest in the country under Al Boutte and George Johnson, which primarily you had to work as a team to do that. And then I have my McDonald's that I can show. And each of these careers, you know, I've excelled. I've been the best in whatever I do, but not because it was given. I worked at it, and on a continuous basis. And the good thing about it all is that I've been healthy, and, you know, married the right woman, got the right children. Just fortunate in many instances, and have the appropriate backing and love to carry me through. Great parents, you know. On my best, most glorious night, I stood up and I said, if my parents could see me now, and how could you at your age, you know, say that? Well, if they could see me now, they molded me. They used to tell me that if you do A, B, and C, you know, you could do this. So if they could see me now, yeah, I followed, and I did, so I salute them. Because at moments like this, you remember all of them. They're never away from you. I had a meeting with him in Chicago, and I had a kind of finance committee, and two persons was with me. And we had bought this book right here. It says The Ebony, and I had a copy of it with me. And the time we were leaving and he was going to stay there to have dinner, we were at Reverend Claude Wyatt's house. And then I asked him if he could, you know, autograph it for me. And then he wrote, as you see, has written to my friend Cirilo McSween, with best wishes and great respect, Martin Luther King Jr. That's when I knew. And then he says, you know, you really one of us, and you've been very dedicated to all what we are about. But we have not been able to find anywhere that Martin has written those words to anybody else. I'm sure he feels the same way, but we have not found it written nowhere else.